guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my March wrap-up. It's a little bit early and a combination of my April TBR. Just like we did last month, I'm just going to mix them into one video and we'll see how it goes from there. March was, yet again, not the best reading month for me, and I think I'm not really in a slump anymore, but I am just reading a lot of really large books and it's just slowing me down because a lot of them are some pretty big epic fantasies. So first I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over my prompts from last month's TBR video, which I said that I was going to talk about the books that I chose for each of those in vlogs throughout the month, and that didn't happen, so let's be honest, my entire TBR jar thing has just been a constant stream of me lying to you about my intentions. So the first prompt involves a game, a challenge, or sports. Yep, that didn't happen. We didn't read anything that fits any of those. As far as I know, I can't really think of anything, so that did not occur. The next one is a book that has a love triangle, which you would think would be super easy, but once again, didn't happen. So then the next prompt is set in or involving a country that you would like to visit. I am going to stretch the truth a little bit here, kind of, but not really. One of the first books that I completed this month was Eloteaway by Darcy Littlebadger. I talked about this in one of my vlogs from this month. I really enjoyed it, and Eloteaway is set in an alternate reality kind of world where all of the supernatural things are known about and widely accepted, kind of-ish. And I really like that, so I guess that is what I'm going to say for a country that I would want to visit. We're just going to say that reality. The next one is an arc, and I read a couple of arcs this month. I read The Stolen Kingdom and I read The Bright and the Pale. The Stolen Kingdom is by Gillian Boehm, which I also discussed in one of my vlogs, and The Bright and the Pale is by Jessica Rubinkowski, which I just finished the other day, and I will talk about those more in just a minute. And then the last prompt is a 2017 release, which we're gonna count this because I've been reading and actually reading Oathbringer for the last few days. I've made quite a bit of progress in it compared to the last several months, so we're going to count it because Oathbringer came out in 2017 and I have been reading a pretty decent chunk of it over the last few days. So now that the prompts from last month are out of the way and I did 3 out of 5, I am not punishing myself because I don't want to. So we're just gonna move on from that and it's gonna be fine. But the first book that I started last month was Valor by John Gwynne. This is the second book in the Faithful and the Fallen series, the first of which is Malice. I'm not going to talk about Valor's specific synopsis because that does get into spoilers for Malice, but you follow, I think, like 7 or 8 different points of view in Malice. It's very character-driven heavy, so I don't really know what to say about the plot. There's the chosen one trope, there's the bad guy who thinks that he's doing good things trope. Is that a trope? I'm making it a trope. There's a fantastic, just like magical world and mythology that John Gwynne creates in this, and there's also fantastic battle scenes. John Gwynne is very well known for writing incredible battle scenes, and me not really being one to, you know, enjoy them all that much, I just kind of skim over them for the most part. They really sucked me in. I really enjoyed Malice, and I ended up really enjoying Valor as well. It took me a bit to get into it because I started March a little bit slumpy, but it's okay. We pulled it together in the end, and by the time I reached the end of Valor, I was obsessed. I really need to start Ruin, but I am terrified because I know that it has devastated a lot of people, and I don't know who's going to die. John Gwynne is very well known for killing off his characters, and I am terrified for all of my favorite people. I ended up giving Valor a full 5 out of 5 stars. It definitely sucked me in faster than Malice did. And the story, once it started, just did not stop. And honestly, I know that Brandon Sanderson is very well known for his Sanderlanche that he throws in at the end of pretty much every Brandon Sanderson book ever, but John Gwynne really seems to do the same thing as well. I always hit a point, I've read 2 of his books, but in those 2 books, I hit a point near like the 75% mark where things just start happening, and they start happening really fast, and you don't want to put the book down because you know that the very next chapter is going to be something equally devastating for all of your characters. The next book that I read was The Stolen Kingdom by Gillian Boehm. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her last name. This was an arc that I received from NetGalley. I have an entire vlog, maybe a couple of vlogs, I think it did leak into 2 vlogs, where I discuss my feelings a little bit more in depth on The Stolen Kingdom, but needless to say, it wasn't entirely for me. I did end up giving it 3 out of 5 stars in the end because I can see how a lot of people would enjoy it. It's definitely a stereotypical YA fantasy. You follow 2 point-of-view characters, Merilith or Merilith, I'm really not sure how to say the main character's name, Maralith even? I really don't know. And Alec, which is spelled a little bit strangely. Mara is a lost heir character. She is the last remaining heir from the reigning family that was overthrown 100 years ago or something. And she is pretty much being forced to reclaim her throne to try and save the country from this dark magic that has been stolen and is overtaking everything, and so on and so forth. Alec is the prince to the current king, and he doesn't necessarily agree with everything that the magic has been doing, and he doesn't want to reinstate the old family, but he also doesn't like the current reign either. So I don't really know what to say about this. The love story happened a little bit fast for my tastes. I didn't particularly love either of the main characters very much. It was interesting. Yeah, I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, and if you want to know more about my thoughts, you can go and check out one of my reading vlogs from this past month. The next book that I read was Eloteaway by Darcy Littlebadger. I ended up reading it a little bit audibly and a little bit on the ebook. I just kind of switched between the 2, and I really enjoyed it. I had heard nothing but great things about this, and I'm still not entirely sure if this falls as a YA or a middle grade. Again, I talk about this in my vlog, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on it here, but I did end up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed the world, as I mentioned earlier. I think it was really cool take on urban fantasy. Essentially, Ellie, or Eloteaway, is in tune with the dead and the spirit world, and when her cousin is tragically murdered. I think that's not a spoiler, I'm pretty sure that happens in the synopsis. When her cousin is tragically murdered, he contacts her in a dream and tells her so, and she is suddenly very invested in finding out who killed him and bringing them to justice. So it's a great story. Again, I'm really not sure if it falls into YA or middle grade. I think that you kind of have to decide that for yourself. I don't know if it really matters. It definitely had a lot of adult themes, and they explore a lot about grief and all of that, but I will say that it has native rep and it has asexual rep, and it was a great story that I really enjoyed, and I would probably eventually like to get the hard copy of it so that I can reread it in the future. The next book that I read was Green Rider by Kristen Britton. I have talked about this book and this series several times before on my channel, so this should be nothing new to you guys, but I really do love this series by Kristen Britton. In this, you follow Kerrigan Galadian, who is just trying to get home after she's been expelled from her school, and on the way home, where she's like walking through the forest, she encounters a guy all dressed in green with 2 arrows in her back who suddenly swears her into a mission to deliver a message to the king. She's then chased by all sorts of bad guys, and she meets all sorts of cool people on her way to complete this dangerous mission, and when she eventually does, she kind of gets drawn into the court politics as well. This was a book that I talked about because I enjoy the animal companion aspect of it, because her horse is entertaining, honestly. He's practically a character in and of himself, even though he doesn't actually have any lines and he doesn't speak or anything like that. It's great. Mostly the reason that I wanted to reread this is because I have tentatively been approved for the arc of Winterlight, which is the newest book in the series that is coming out in September. I wanted to read all of them before it came out, or at least before I received the arc, so that I could refresh myself on the story and the characters, because while I've been reading them as they come out, she has been writing this book series since 2007, and there's been about 4 to 5 years, I think, in between each of those books. So it's been a long time since I've read all of them back to back, and I am really excited to just go on this journey again. I'm not surprised by this fact, but I did give Green Rider a full 5 out of 5 stars. I know that It might not be for everybody because it is your classic fantasy. It's fairly tropey, but I really enjoy it every single time I've read it so far, and I can't wait to move on to First Writer's Call and move on in my reread of the series. The final book that I read, which I just finished a couple days ago, was The Bright and the Pale by Jessica Rubinkowski. This was an arc, again, that I received from NetGalley, and I actually enjoyed this more than I thought that I was going to. This book follows Val, who is one of the last surviving members of a country that, or a village? I think it's a village that has been overtaken by a curse that has pretty much frozen everybody into a solid block of ice, I guess you could say. So she's the only person in her village to have survived this curse, and because it is cursed, the current czar of the country that she lives in is hunting down everybody that looks like her and killing them because they think that those people are spreading the curse just like they would a plague, and so they are hunting them and putting them into camps. So Val is one of the last surviving members of this group of people that hides who she is, and prior to the events of the book, you find out that her partner, who was also a part of this group of people, was murdered by one of these stormhounds, which is kind of like a Kingsguard elite military force, kind of. So at the beginning of this book, Val is dealing with her grief because her partner and very, very close friend has been murdered, but she quickly finds out that all is not as it seems, and he is actually alive. So she is forced into leading an expedition back to her hometown and into this mountain that mines this specific mineral that is very, very valuable if she would like to see him ever again. She's a part of the Thieves Guild. She's a very accomplished thief, and that is where she is lending her skills to, as well as the fact that she knows her way around this area. That was a very long and drawn out explanation, but there is a romance. It is Russian folklore, I think, inspired. I don't know if it's inspired by any story, but it has a lot of Russian elements to it. It was good. It was a very quick read. I really did enjoy it once I started getting into it. I think that it's going to be a duology, so it does leave off on a little bit of a cliffhanger. But there were parts of it that I didn't love as much. The romance felt very young to me, and it was mostly because the romance was just so much would have been fixed if they had just talked to each other. If you want to know more of my thoughts, I left a full review on Goodreads talking about my issues with their miscommunication, which is a trope that I absolutely despise. I cannot stand it in any kind of romance, young adult or adult, and they took this very, very far. She would say things that he wouldn't listen to, he would say things that she wouldn't listen to, and she'd just get mad and she'd storm off, and it was infuriating and it was exhausting. So for that reason, a lot of the issues that I had were mostly with that, and I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. So that is it for the books that I finished in March. I do have a couple of honorable mentions. I am still reading Oathbringer, as I mentioned before, but I am making quite a bit of progress, so hopefully I'll be finishing with that shortly. I started A Court of Silver Flames towards the beginning of this month. I got about 100 pages in, and I just haven't had the will to pick it back up again. That is something for a whole different video. I just have not been feeling it. It's just large, honestly. I think that if I were to pick it up, I would fly through it because I do love that world, and I do love most of the characters, except for Nesta. I don't like Nesta. But yeah, I started A Court of Silver Flames, but I haven't finished it yet, which is shocking, I know, for me. And then I also started Meant to Be Immortal, which is by Lindsay Sands, which is a vampire romance novel that is a part of a series that I have been reading probably since I was in high school. They're great if you haven't read them. They're just a fun time. They're a really different take on like vampire lore and legend. These vampires are actually like ancient Atlanteans that have developed nanobot technology, and if that is not enough to interest you, I don't know what would be. They're entertaining, they're funny as hell, and they're fairly steamy as well, so, you know, it's a good time. Definitely pick them up if you haven't had the chance to yet. Okay, so that was it for all of the books that I read or started in the month of March. It is now time to pick all of my 5 prompts for my April TBR. Listen, I know this hasn't been going super successfully for me, but we're just gonna keep drawing these prompts anyway. No matter what happens, we're just gonna keep doing it, and if I fail, I fail. That's a uplifting look on the whole thing, isn't it? Okay, so the first prompt Okay, so the first prompt is a thriller, and it is a cover by. Prompt number 2 is a graphic novel, and it is a book you meant to read last year. Book number 3 is a sci-fi, and it is a book whose cover was redesigned. 4 is another thriller, and it is to read a classic. Prompt number 5 is also a thriller, and it is to read a retelling or a reimagining. Alright guys, that is it for my March wrap-up and my April TBR. Let me know if you've read any of these books down below in the comments. As always, there will be links to where you can get yourself a copy if you are interested in any of the ones that I talked about. And that is it for me today, so I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!